So Rachel Reeves is reportedly eyeing up ISAs once again, and this could spell financial devastation across the UK. Why do I say that? Well, stick around for this video and I'll explain my views on it. They are just my views, you're free to disagree with them, but I do put a lot of thought into these things, and from a financial perspective, as a once practicing financial advisor for mortgages and since a practicing barrister, and I see things across the spectrum, how companies work, how these movements flow, and I get a good idea of what's going on. And as somebody myself, completely debt-free, I think I have some way of giving you some insight onto these things. So we are here, obviously, I hope, on My Money channel. So please do subscribe for some input on these things. But let's take a look at what Rachel Reeves is talking about with this cash ISA. And a bit later in the video, stick around for the second half, where she might also be attacking pensions. So I'm going to give you some views on that as well and how that might help. But first of all, the ISAs. Now, a lot of people don't know what an ISA is. Now, I did a lengthy video talking about ISAs. Some of the little details might have changed since then, since I did the video, but very broadly speaking, ISAs can either be a cash ISA or a stocks and shares ISA. Now, the main thing is that this is a tax-efficient way of either saving or investing money. There is a current limit of £20,000 a year, and they are used by about 18 million people in the United Kingdom. Now, whether you put money into a cash ISA or a stocks and shares ISA, it really does make quite a big difference, because one is just a tax efficient way of saving money because you might be risk averse. And this is something that I'm going to touch on in this video. And another, you might actually looking to be wanting to grow that pot of money by using stocks and shares, but without becoming a full-on, fully fledged stock trader, which I also trained to do in my days gone by as well, by the way. So I do have a bit of an understanding here. Now, just a brief potted background so that you know where I'm coming from on all this. I qualified many moons ago to do all sorts of different things, to get a broad understanding of different markets and how these businesses work across the UK, but also they were ways of generating income and making money. So you name it, I've pretty much done it. Starting with the most bizarre, I looked at oil trading and getting involved in oil deals. I did insurance. I qualified to sell and broker life insurance, critical illness insurance, and also a key man insurance, and all sorts of other business types insurance. Also mortgages, and I also trained to be a stockbroker, and obviously then later became a barrister. So I've pretty much done the training across the spectrum of all different sorts of financial and legal businesses. And as a business owner myself, for many, many years now, decades in fact, of experience in business, I tend to know how these things work. I know what makes a business tick. I know what can kill a business and how businesses operate. So with all of that in mind, let's take a look at these ISAs. So she's already said that she's not going to affect the overall limit of £20,000. She confirmed that, and she also said that she was going to delay the review of ISAs in her recent spring statement. But that's not to say that the autumn budget will not bring some changes about ISAs. So here's what I think is really going to happen, because all the news sort of suggests that she's going to look at the cash ISAs. So just to be clear, once again, for those that are not sure, a cash ISA is just some way that you store your money, which is a tax-efficient way of saving your money, and you don't want to risk it on the stock market. That's pretty much it. If you want the opportunity of a bit more return, but it can also go down, remember, you can put them into stocks and shares ISAs with the same limit of £20,000 a year. Now, what she's apparently looking to do is look at the limit for cash ISAs. Now, if, for example, she reduces that down to £4,000, which is the figure that's been floating about, then that is obviously then going to make people think, well, I do want to use the £20,000 limit, but over and above the £4,000, then it's got to go into stocks and shares. But then I also think she's going to either incentivize or, worse still, force people with the stocks and shares ISA. I did a video on this not long ago where on the surface, it's a good thing to support UK businesses and encourage investment in UK businesses and support the UK economy and the growth of the UK economy and so on and so forth. But it's a bit flawed for reasons I'll say in a minute. But if that's the case, then what I think she's going to do is try to force people, either by restricting investments or just simply by restricting where that money can go tax efficiently, to push it into stocks and shares ISAs. And then either by regulations or by incentivizing, push them into UK stocks and shares. Now, why do I think this is a problem? Because for one, it just cuts out the choice, because many people might want to invest in US companies. A lot of people do this, because this is not financial advice, by the way, but a lot of people want to invest in US companies, Nvidia, Apple, big tech companies, other sort of predictable US companies that you might want to invest in with your stocks and shares ISA. You might want to do that for the uptick that you might get by putting the money there. Now, here's the problem. So for one, it's going to cut that choice. It's going to restrict the choice to UK companies. And let's be honest, a lot of people choose US stocks because they want the returns from those US stocks. They want to have the benefit of the uptick of investing in US stocks. So first of all, it's restricting choice. Secondly, there is no guaranteed uptake, just because if she does restrict cash ISAs, and if she does either incentivize or force people to invest in UK companies, that is not to say that people are going to do that. Research suggests that people that put their money into cash ISAs do it because they want to avoid risk. That's what it's set up for. It was designed as a tax-efficient way for somebody to save their money. So that is the reason they put it there. That is what they want to do. Over 90% of people, research suggests, that is what they want to do it for. So if they curtail the limit on that and try to force people to invest that money, in my view, they are just not likely to do it, because they don't just suddenly lose their risk-averse strategy overnight just because the rules change. They won't just necessarily dump it into the stock market via the stocks and shares ISA just because their limits are reduced for cash ISAs. What are they going to do? They're going to put it somewhere else which is safe. So they're going to put it into another property or something like that. They're not likely to just dump it on the stock market. So that's the second reason. So it's going to reduce choice, for one, which I think is a terrible thing to do when you're trying to encourage growth of an economy. And it is not likely to force those people whose money that is that they're trying to move into the stocks and shares ISAs into the UK economy. That is my prediction. They're just not necessarily going to do that. So I don't think that is going to work. What it is going to do is force people not to save money in the cash ISAs. And I think that's a problem. And I think that's a shame, because a lot of people do that for very good reasons. They feel comfortable doing that. They feel safe doing that. And that is what they want to do. But speaking of safe and comfortable, then we come on to pensions. And this is, quite frankly, this is going to really upset a lot of things. And there's a few sort of life tips, tricks, and routine-y type things that I'm going to talk about in the second half of the video, but stick around, because here's something from one of my sponsors. So this is quite alarming, and I think you really do need to hear this. Stick around. Now, just as an aside for a moment, you've heard me talk a lot about the dangers of somebody impersonating you and taking out loans in your name and this kind of thing. But what happens if there is a data breach and your data is among that data breach, and then it might end up on the dark web? Well, here's what you do about that, because one of the reasons I partner with NordVPN on this channel is not only does it provide as a virtual private network a secure and anonymized IP address through which you get DNS filtering, meaning it filters websites that you visit and downloads to make sure that they're not malicious, but it also has what they call the dark web monitor, as you can see on screen here. Now, if your information's been caught up in a data leak and ends up on a dark web, that's the bit of the internet that isn't really indexed by search engines, not to get overly complicated about it, but if your data ends up there and then it's available to hackers and all that sort of stuff, then this can alert you that your information is there. And it points you to collections of leaks of data, and you can go and change the password, change the data, or even close down the accounts to make sure that they are completely removed. Because if your data, i.e. your email and your password, is on the dark web somewhere, then they can go to your accounts, log in, and you may have forgotten about these. But when you log into those accounts, they could have your address, they could have payment details, and all sorts of things. So there could be lots of these accounts that you've forgotten about, maybe a fitness app or something that you've forgotten about years ago, but your data might end up leaked. You can see that it's there. The hackers might be able to get in and find out lots of information about you, but NordVPN has a dark web monitor that allows you to go there and remove that data. That alone is worth the money. And as a partner to my channel here, I get you a great discount, which is 4 months extra free off the normal plans with a 30-day money-back guarantee using the link nordvpn.com/Daniel Schensmith. I'll link it below and I'll pin it as a comment, which will give you 4 months extra free, as well as your 30 days to change your mind. But the peace of mind for the price of a cup of coffee, if you do find that your data is leaked and on the dark web somewhere, you will want to know about it. So Nord will help you to do that. So check out the link, nordvpn.com/Daniel Schensmith for your 4 months extra free, and I thank them for sponsoring this video. Okay, so back to money and talking about pensions. What is the big problem here? Well, the big problem is quite an obvious one, and it's been bandied around for many years now, and that is that we have a changing demographic in the UK. When the pension age was set, that has obviously been set with the current demographic, the current population, the current trends of health trends and all those sorts of things back in those days. And that has gradually changed over the years. And so we've seen changes in the pension age. But what we have now is an ever increasing problem. We do have an aging population. We do have a bit of a crisis. Labour do face this problem as the current government. It is incumbent upon them to make these decisions. But what they are now looking to do, reportedly, is to either hike the pension age once again or means test the payments. Meaning, if you've done well for yourself, then your state pension may not be paid as much or at all, potentially. Because if they means test the payments and then suddenly say, well, you don't qualify because you worked really hard and you did really well, you've got a lot of savings, you've got your house, you've got this, you've got that, you don't need the state pension, even though you've been paying into it for so many years. They might then say that you don't need it. Now, I've been looking at what some experts have said on this, because just because someone's an expert doesn't mean that what they say is absolutely gospel. Just like I wouldn't expect you to take everything I say as gospel. You listen to what I say because it's just my view based on my experience and my expertise in various fields. But there's an expert reported in GB News, Stephen Lowe, Group Communications Director at Just Group. He says that as a result of the rising longevity and dropping birth rates, it's estimated that a quarter of the UK's population will be aged 65 or over by 2050. This means the burden of funding the state pension will fall on a shrinking proportion of working people, and obviously, therefore, it's just going to be unsustainable. So, quite rightly, something needs to be done about it. Now, either changing the age or means testing, neither of these things, he says, are political point-scoring choices, and that's obviously true. But as we've seen with other things, he makes a very, very good point here. Like any other kind of benefit or anything that you receive, and there's a very important life point that I'll come back to in just a moment. This probably belongs on my secrets channel, but I'll tell you here anyway. Now, a very interesting point is once you start to give somebody something, for example, benefits, for example, winter fuel allowance, for example, pensions and whatever else that someone receives, once they receive it and they've been receiving it for some kind of time, they grow dependent on it, they expect it, they anticipate it, and eventually, let's be honest, they feel entitled to it. And many of us will feel entitled to that state pension because that's what we've been told and trained to expect and to grow up to pay into, be a good citizen, pay into this, pay all your taxes, pay your national insurance, pay your stamps. And at the end of it, you get your state pension because then, of course, you can retire. But if the ground shifts and the demographics shift and then the rules shift and then the age that it kicks in shifts and then maybe we get means testing, then suddenly you may not get that after all. Now, as with any other benefit, as Stephen Lowe suggests here, it is incredibly difficult to remove it, as we've seen with the massive backlash with the winter fuel allowance. Because let's look at it for what it is, a winter fuel allowance. Why was it necessary? Well, because of the skyrocketing energy prices. We have some of the highest energy prices worldwide. When I was in China just recently, they could not quite believe our prices, and I certainly couldn't believe theirs. It's a fraction of what we pay here in the UK. Absolutely ludicrous. And so the winter fuel allowance came about because of the rocketing fuel prices. But once that's in play, it's incredibly difficult to take it back because suddenly, and this is the live point here, suddenly you're not stopping a benefit that you were giving to somebody. Suddenly the implication is, and the inference is, you're taking it away. So once you're taking something away, then you are the one then plunging the person into poverty because they depend on that money. And this is exactly the same as why I don't support credit cards. One of the most frequent things that I heard either as a mortgage professional or from friends and family who use credit cards, is that, and I quote, "I would not be able to get through the month without the credit card." Now, what that says to me is they need to spend at least X, which is £1, £2, £3, £4, £500 or whatever it was on the credit card to get by month to month to make those payments meet. And very occasionally they'll get some overtime, they'll get a bonus, they'll get this, and they'll pay a little chunk off the credit card. And then they'll chip away and they'll try to get back on track with that credit card. But month in and month out, they have to pay that little bit extra on the credit card. Otherwise, in their words, they won't get by month to month. But that's a problem. That is a serious problem, because that means you are dependent on that debt, because that's what it is. Let's call it as it is. It is a debt. It's an accruing and it's accumulating. It's an exponentially growing debt, interest upon interest upon interest of the original payments. You are then building up that debt if you rely on that credit card. Now, compare and contrast that with any kind of benefit, whether it's a winter fuel allowance or even your state pension. If you depend on that money, then, and someone takes it away, then suddenly it's not that you're not any longer receiving that benefit of sorts. You know, a state pension is not a benefit. Obviously, it's a pension, isn't it? But if suddenly you are not receiving that, but it's someone taking it away, then suddenly it feels like they are taking it away from you. They are plunging you into a lower level of sustainability. And that's a problem. That is a problem for any government, because any government that's taking anything away from anybody, suddenly they don't like it. Take, for example, I've done probably 3,000 or so videos across my channels in the last 5 years. I've been on YouTube since, I think, 2006, but then more prominently from 2009. And some of my videos still attract views today. On all sorts, anything from back pain to law and everything else. I've done videos on topics across the spectrum. But I'll tell you this. Just recently, I decided to put some members videos because I revamped, a team at YouTube came to me. We revamped my memberships on Black Belt Barrister. I restructured them. I renamed them. I put new perks in there. And so I started to do new videos, member-only videos, so that people can have exclusive videos if they pay membership to my Black Belt Barrister channel. And bless them, lots of people do that. They support my channel and it's fantastic. But here's the thing. Over the thousands of videos that I've done for free on that channel, once that I push out just 1 or 2 member-only videos, I received comments that said, these should be free. And think about that for a moment. The thousands of videos that I've done that those people making those comments have watched all those videos for free, or they've had the opportunity at least to watch each and every one of those videos for free, paying nothing to me, paying nothing to YouTube, unless they pay for YouTube Premium or unless they join my channel as a member and so on. They watch them for free because YouTube is a fantastic platform. I love this platform. It enables me to communicate with you, to put all of this content out there. And I've done thousands of videos on there, countless millions of hours that people have watched my content, all for free. But the minute that I put a video out and say, this is a members video, because it's a really detailed, really considered, in-depth video on the family court system or whatever. And 1 or 2 people will have said, this should be free, because they feel entitled that they should get everything from me for free. Now, be that as it may, I've done those videos as member-only videos. But that is the mentality that governments face when they make these decisions to shift something, because people can turn very quickly. Now, the life lesson here is this. When someone asks you for something, and I'm talking directly to you now, when someone asks you something, because they will, at some point in your life, I tell my son this, at some point in your life, somebody will ask you for something. It might be to borrow something. It might be for money. It might be for a lift. It might be for any number of different things. Be careful who you say yes to and what you say yes to. If it's money, then be careful that it's not going to be a regular thing. And if you lend them money, I never advocate lending any money, by the way. I've done it myself, but I would never, ever recommend it. Always goes wrong and never ends well. So I don't recommend it. So don't do it. But if you did, it has to be money that you're prepared to lose, because if you don't want the hassle of chasing it and destroy the friendship or relationship or whatever, worse still if it's family, if you don't want all of that to chase that money, you've got to be prepared to let it go and to lose it from the outset. Else don't do it in the first place. Likewise, if you are going to and from a place regularly and somebody there says, "Can I hitch a lift back?" and you say, "Yeah, okay, no problem," because it's on the way back, then suddenly you've created that expectation. And every single time you're coming back and forth, they will expect that lift. As soon as you say, "I'm going somewhere else today," suddenly they'll feel like you're taking their lift away from them. And this is absolutely true. It happens to everyone, everywhere, every time. And you're not the exception. So there's a life lesson with these things. With the ISAs, the expectation that you can do that, and suddenly it might be gone. The pensions, the expectation that you'll receive it, and then suddenly it might be gone. Funny story, when I was very, very young, I didn't even look into what state pensions were. My young mind at the time already thought, I can't rely on this. It will change by the time I'm due to be paid it. And it might. It might be non-existent by the time I'm due to be paid it. So bear that in mind. When you do something, when you decide something, be prepared that at some point that person might turn and think that you're taking something away from them. So there's the life lesson. But I hope that is useful to you. And for what it's worth, I think that these proposed changes are not going to have the positive effect. I think it's, with great respect to her, I think it's a little bit student economics and student politics. I think it's a little bit silly. It's, it's a case of, let's stop them from putting the money there. Let's force them to put the money into stocks and shares, and let's force that to be the UK businesses, and that'll grow the economy. It's just not going to work. That's just my view. Feel free to disagree, but let me know what you think in the comments. But I hope you found that useful. Please do subscribe to my money channel here, and as always, thank you for watching.